Hi, my name is Celeste. I'm from the Bahamas. I never expected to fall in love with my enemy. Isn't that insane? Before I go on, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. When I was 5 years old, my family moved, and we ended up living next to the biggest jerk ever, Antonio. He'd pulled off heads from my dolls, tugged at my ponytails in class, and one time, he added salt to the lemonade I was selling, so everyone demanded refunds. I couldn't wait to go to college and get away from Antonio, but that dream was shattered when Antonio got into the same college as me. On the first day of college, I wanted to make the perfect impression, so I chose my wardrobe carefully.
Hi.
Antonio stepped out in front of me. Then, it happened. Someone bounced Antonio's hand and his milkshake flew into my sweatshirt.
I'm so sorry, Celeste.
Ugh! Why do you have to ruin everything? I stormed off.
Hey, wait up!
I stopped.
Hi, I saw what happened. Here you go.
Before me stood the most handsome guy I'd ever seen. He introduced himself as Zach, handed me the napkins, and I thanked him. That was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and a few weeks later, we became a couple. I thought my life was going pretty well, but my parents made a crucial mistake on their 40th anniversary, and I paid the price. At my parents' house, the party was in full swing when Dale, my older brother, walked in.
So, Celeste, where's your boyfriend?
He couldn't make it.
Are you sure you have a boyfriend?
He had to redo an exam.
You know, honey, if you're dating someone your own gender, you can come out of the closet. We wouldn't love you any less.
Mom! My face burned when I realized that the guests were staring at me. I quickly exited the party and sat in the kitchen eating hors d'oeuvres from a platter.
Honey, why are you hiding in the kitchen? You should be outside enjoying the party with us.
I'm fine in here, Dad.
Come on, you'll miss the show.
Show? I stepped into the living room and Antonio was at the front of the crowd. When he saw me, he winked and I grimaced. What's he doing here?
Your brother hired him as entertainment for the night.
The next day at school, I rolled my eyes as Antonio stuttered towards me. Last night, I had no choice but to be around you, but we're at school now. I don't need to hang out with you.
Celeste, will you go out with me?
Sure. Why not? My eyes widened. Did I just say yes to Antonio?
Great, I'll pick you up at 7.
At the restaurant, Antonio and I were having a great time. Dinner was wonderful. I didn't know you had it in you.
The decency to be a good human being? There are many things about me you'll learn over time.
Antonio took my hand in his and kissed it. I stood up quickly and almost knocked my plate onto the floor. I'll be right back. As I walked towards the bathroom, that's when I saw him. Zach was on the other end of the restaurant having dinner with some girl. Hi, I said as I approached the table. He got up awkwardly.
Hi, babe, what are you doing here?
The same thing as you. I'm here having dinner. So, you're on a date?
No, this is my cousin Cynthia. She's only here for the night and is heading back to college tomorrow.
Cousin, huh? I tilted my head and glared at Cynthia, which made her shift uncomfortably in her seat. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I don't think this is working out. I think we should see other people.
Is everything okay here?
I turned around and looked into Antonio's eyes. Everything's fine, but I think I lost my appetite for dessert. Can we leave now? Antonio nodded his head and took my hand. As Antonio and I sat on the rock under the moonlit sky, the waves crashed against the rock soothingly.
Are you having a good time tonight?
Antonio broke the silence. Surprisingly, I am.
I'm just happy that I'm finally able to bring a smile to your face.
Antonio and I sat on the rock for hours and chatted. I think we should get back. I have an early exam tomorrow. I stood up, but my foot got caught on my dress. Panic rose quickly in me as I felt myself falling backwards. A strong arm pulled me forward, and I gasped for breath.
Are you okay?
I nodded. I was trembling and couldn't bring myself to speak. Antonio gently lifted my chin and brought his lips down on mine. My heart fluttered and a warmth spread through my body. Over the next few days, I had to admit the more time I spent with Antonio, the more I realized I was head over heels in love with him. It wasn't long before he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I accepted. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't help but notice how other girls flirted with my boyfriend. If he spoke to a girl for more than 1 minute, I'd pull him away from her or I'd hang onto his arm and stare at the girl until she felt uncomfortable and left. Now that Antonio was mine, I wasn't about to let any girls steal him away. One weekend, Antonio decided we needed a break and we drove to the beach. I went to the bathroom, and when I returned, my boyfriend was hunched over some girl with his lips on hers. I was furious. I marched over to Antonio and tried to pull him away. I went to the bathroom for a few minutes and I came back to you kissing another girl. How could you? Antonio ignored me until the guy next to him nodded. Antonio got up without a word, grabbed my hand, and walked away. When we were a few feet from the crowd, he turned to me. His eyes were like daggers.
What the heck is wrong with you, Celeste? While you were in the bathroom, I rescued a teenager. I wasn't kissing her. I was trying to resuscitate her, for crying out loud.
My face turned red.
You know what? I think this was a bad idea. It's over between us.
Over the next few days, I tried to call Antonio, but he refused to answer my calls and text messages. You really blew it, Celeste. I mumbled to myself as I tried to call Antonio for the 500th time. I had to get Antonio back. I just had to. I couldn't live my life without him. The next day, I snuck into Mr. Washington's office, the president of the college, locked the door, and turned on the PA system. Over the PA system, I told Antonio that I was sorry, I loved him, and I hoped he'd forgive me. I turned off the PA system and inhaled deeply. Suddenly, loud cheers and clapping could be heard from around the school. I stepped out of Mr. Washington's office, and Antonio was there. He pulled me into a kiss, and I melted into his arms. Over the next few days, my social life was amazing. But I was failing in all of my classes. I needed to pass my midterms in order to bring my grades up. I decided to steal the midterm answer sheets. The only problem was that after my PA system apology, Mr. Washington now kept his door locked. I needed those papers. The next day, I wore a cute outfit and headed to Mr. Washington's office and knocked on the door.
Hi, Celeste, what can I do for you?
He invited me to sit, and I put my plan into action. I put on my best damsel in distress voice, and I told him that a few of the boys on campus were bullying me and I didn't feel safe. Mr. Washington walked over to my side of the table and leaned against the desk. Suddenly, I stood up, leaned in, and kissed Mr. Washington. That wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that Mr. Washington kissed me back. Can you believe it? I got a notification on my phone and I pulled away to check it. Mr. Washington, I have a proposition for you. Give me the answer sheets to all my classes for the midterm test, or, I turned my phone so he'd see the video, I'll tell your wife what you've been up to. Mr. Washington's face turned red. Without a word, he went to his cabinet and handed me the answer sheets. Once I had them in hand, I smiled and walked out of the office. I couldn't believe it. I'd actually pulled that off. Or so I thought. When I got the results for my midterms, I expected to get all A's, but I failed everything. I stormed into Mr. Washington's office. Mr. Washington, I thought we had a deal. I guess you don't value your marriage as much as I thought.
You asked me for the answer sheets I had and I gave them to you. That was the deal. It's not my fault the teachers changed the test at the last minute.
Mr. Washington smirked. I stormed out of his office. If Mr. Washington thought he could play me like a fiddle, he was dead wrong. He was going to pay, and big time. I blurred my face and posted the video from a fake account to social media with the headline, "President of prestigious college preys on young female students." Not only did Mr. Washington lose his job, but his wife filed for divorce. Reporters flooded the front of the school, and anonymously I told one of the reporters the teachers at the school took bribes and leaked the answer sheets for exams. With all the scandals surrounding the school, the president of the college board, Mr. Finley, said all grades were null and void and students had to reset all the midterms. Yeah, I know it was a crazy thing to do, but at least I was able to pass my midterms. A few weeks after the scandal, I went to my parents' house for Dale's birthday. Dad bought him a fact book about everything. He walked over to Antonio and I. "Did you know that Jennypap is a tropical American tree whose fruit has a gelatinous pulp which is used for flavoring drinks and to make black dye?" I looked at Antonio. I felt strange, as though a fog had lifted off me. "What are you doing here?" Dale raised his eyebrow. "Celeste, he's your boyfriend. You invited him." "Boyfriend?" As if. Where's Zach? Dale walked off and shouted, "Mom, Celeste spiked the punch again." I needed to get some fresh air. I started to feel the walls of the house closing in. I walked out to the backyard and sat on the bench. I tried to call Zach, but he didn't answer. I buried my head in my hands. I couldn't remember anything. What was wrong with me? I felt someone sit next to me.
Hey.
Antonio's voice was soft. "I'm not in the mood, Antonio. Please just leave me alone." I stood up to leave, but what Antonio said next felt as though he had dropped a ton of bricks on me. He confessed that at my parents' party, he hypnotized me. He said it was something he saw on social media and he didn't expect it to work, but when it did, he couldn't resist having me under his control. Apparently, the word Jennypap tree was a trigger for my hypnotized mind. Before I knew what was happening, I slapped Antonio squarely across the face. 6 months of my life. You stole 6 months of my life, Antonio. This is the worst thing you've ever done to me. Out of nowhere, a punch landed on Antonio's face. It was Dale. He'd come back to ask us if we wanted cake, and he heard the whole thing. Antonio and Dale fought until Mom and Dad tore them apart.
"I'm sorry, Celeste."
"Leave! No!" Dale shouted. Dale and I kept what really happened between ourselves. I took a week off from school and I contacted Zach on every social media outlet he had. I told him I really needed to see him and it was important. While home alone one afternoon, there was a knock on the door. "Thanks for coming," I smiled.
Antonio actually contacted me. He told me what he did and he wanted to make things right.
So, did he make things right?
At least I know why you've been acting so weird over the past few months.
I leaned forward to kiss Zach, but he pulled away and my heart dropped. What's wrong?
I'm taking my girlfriend to meet my parents.
Zach stepped to the side so I could see the girl seated in the front seat of his car.
I really hoped things had turned out differently, but when you get lemons, you make lemonade, right?
Zach smiled and walked away. I closed the door, sank to the floor, and cried. The next day, I was at the supermarket when I noticed Antonio. I turned my trolley and walked in the other direction, hoping that he didn't see me, but he did.
"Celeste, please forgive me. You can't stay mad at me forever."
"Watch me." I walked away and Antonio trailed behind me. As I passed two ladies on the aisle with hair dyes, one said, "Did you know this dye comes from the Jennypap tree?" I spun around and pulled Antonio into a kiss. Kiss. Kiss.